Good evening, humans. The rune of tonight is Tiwaz, an old friend of mine. It's the rune that I have borne on my skin the longest. Before we begin, there's a catch. Like, comment, share. Things that help us. Now, let's get to it. Thormund had a problem. He had fought long and hard to become the master of this ship. And now here, on the banks of the river Volga, he had a problem that he did not know how to solve. See, being the captain of a ship requires righteousness and courageousness and wisdom, and he didn't really have any of them. He knew he had ended up where he was by the grace of the gods, through much adversity and quite a bit of luck. And now he stood here, dependent on his oarsmen, and more dependent on his steersman, the man who knew this river better than anyone he had ever met before, but a man who was terribly greedy. Arne had, a few evenings before, set his sight on a beautiful necklace worn by one of the horsemen. The horsemen, whatever the hell they called themselves, decorated themselves with all manner of beautiful, strange artifacts, hammered out silver, strange coins and stones, colourful stones you'd never seen before, and long, beautiful horns or tusks hung in pairs. They were odd items, but they were beautiful. And Arne had seen one and had decided it should be his. He had bartered, he had tried to trade, he had done anything to get his hand on it. But the owner, a stout, muscularly built horseman, had refused to trade it as if it was something very important. Language was difficult. They only had one interpreter who charged them every time they needed anything translated, and Arne did not have the money for this. Thormund had told him to stop his bickering and his begging and his incessant attempts, but it had not worked. So in the end, Arne had stolen the necklace. He thought he had been clever, but everyone knew it would be him, because who else would it be? Who else would be so bloody interested in that particular necklace? And now it was missing, and the horseman had trampled into camp, kicked about, and gone through Arne's things. Thormund had not had a chance to stop them, and even if he did, he knew that he could not. These men were important. He needed them more than they needed him. So he had let them, and they had found the necklace. And the interpreter had been called. Weapons had been drawn, and shouting had happened first, but the interpreter had been called, and now they stood here. A knife was to the neck of Arne, and Thormund was negotiating back and forth as best he could with the interpreter and everything. And he knew that he was going to possibly lose Arne. He offered a bribe, and he offered another bribe, and none of it bit on the horsemen. They were proud people that rode the steppes, and traded in strange items, and raided cities far into territories that he would never go into because it was far away from the rivers. But they had wealth and they had knowledge he needed. so he could not risk angering them too much. So he stopped trying to bribe them. He let them confer with each other. He could see that they were interested in finding a solution. And in the end, through the interpreter, they told him that instead of taking Arne's life, they would just take his hand. Now Thormod knew damn well that if Arne's hand was taken, he would probably lose his life anyways, and if he didn't lose his life, he wouldn't be able to steer the ship, and that was what he needed him for. Getting down this river at some of the harder points, especially down some of the by rivers and off springs, which was needed to sneak, he would be useless. So what to do? They did give the option that someone else could offer up their hand in Arne's stead, but none of his crew wanted to do that. So morning came. After a night of sleep, Arne was held captive by them in their camp, and Arne's hand was to be taken at an old tree stump set in the middle of a clearing, and they met there. Arne looked like he might have been weeping, but he looked like he was determined. Thormod was a wise man and knew what had to be done. Rules are rules, law and justice. Doesn't matter where you are, but where you are from, there will always be rules and laws. And so when you go somewhere else, you must obey the rules and laws that there are there. He knew this. So it was with much determination and sadness that he walked forth, past the guards, past the strong horsemen that stank of their horses, and walked up to Arne, who stood by the stump, looking determined. And Thormod had looked at their leader, who stood there with his curved blade, ready to take the hand of the thief. And Thormod had just pushed Arne aside, knelt down, and put his left hand upon the stump, and looked at their chieftain and nodded. This would be one of the first true and wise and strong decisions of Thormod's life, and much good would come from it. Possibly a blessing from the gods, thanking him for doing the right thing. For the next day, Thormod was still alive, hand bound, slight fever, as they sailed on down the Volga, with Arne at the steering post, keeping them safe onwards on their journey. And in their hold was much value that they had traded their way to with the horseman. They had seen his courage, and even though he was now slightly crippled, they had seen him worthy. Strange shores, strange tidings, strange results, but justice. And that is the end of the story today. Northern Black Dot Shop. Go enjoy, and good night.